I did.
Oh, she is okay to start. Okay, Jackie, we're going to start. We got a couple minutes.
Good morning. It is a beautiful day after all that rainy weather, isn't it? Yeah. Welcome to the Treasure Coast Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Stuart, Florida. Today is May 28th, 2023. My name is Deb Harris, and I'm your worship associate for today. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome people of all gender identities, ethnicities, ages, and backgrounds. We're on YouTube too, and we welcome those of you who are joining us that way. To be put on the email list or to find out more information about us, go to our website at tcuuc.org. There's an email link to request our online newsletter. And now if you'd check that your cell phones are silenced. And I think, do we have one visitor? No? We welcome any visitors? I guess it's all home people today. Okay. Announcements can be found in the Friday emailed newsletter. The memorial service for our friend and UU member Richard Granat will be held on Saturday, coming up June 3rd at 11 o'clock. We hope you'll be able to come to honor him. And Janet Rader has a sign-up sheet if you're willing to bring a snack or help with setup. So see her for that. Please join us on the first and third Tuesdays at Stewart Veterans Memorial Park downtown at noon for a brown bag lunch. So that's coming up. And we thank those who are helping with today's service. Jackie Robbins, of course, for the beautiful music, our greeter and usher, Janet, and our host, Karina Poloni, and our tech support, Rachel Valentino. Joanne Leone and Marguerite Gregory always help with coffee and cookies in the hall. And of course, the Reverend Bob MacDonald is in the pulpit today. And now we'll start with our prelude.
The Swan by Camille Sasson.
What a beautiful way to start. Thank you. Our chalice lighting words this morning are from Deborah Burrell, "A flame to light our path." Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears for the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. There's a movie currently streaming on Netflix and several other streaming services called A Man Called Otto. Have you seen it? Yeah. It's based on a Swedish book and movie. It stars Tom Hanks as a curmudgeonly older man who's suffered multiple losses, and he's decided to end his life in order to join his deceased wife. Just hearing that doesn't, if you haven't seen it, don't worry, it is funny. He has conflicts at work and in his neighborhood. He's at war with a real estate development company. He's estranged from his lifelong friend. You can really understand Otto's despair. But then a new family moves in across the street, and that changes the trajectory of his life. While watching the movie the other night for the second time, and I'm going to watch it again for a third, it struck me that this was a really you movie. It has themes of love, of respect. It advocates acceptance and compassion in human relations. It's about building a caring community in which people of different ethnic, racial, language backgrounds, people with different gender identities and life experiences come together to help one another. Otto learns that it's okay to ask for help, and he finds joy and a purpose for living by helping others. It's a good movie. There's a quote in our hymnal, number 698 by Wayne Aronson, that captures one of the movie's messages. And as we've been focusing here lately on mental health, I think it's an important message to remember. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. And now we will stand as willing and able to sing hymn 26, Holy, 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 and we'll do 3 verses. now we'll recite our affirmation, speaking the first verse and singing the second. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
The responsive reading is the UN Charter. I just need to look up the number of that. 475. There you go. We're going to read this together. 475. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. Am I hearing you? Oh, you're reading it off the wall. We're going to start. All right, here we go. We, the peoples of the United Nations. It might be a good idea for you to turn to 475. Yeah, my boss just said use the hymnal. I'll give you a moment. Are we ready? We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small, to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom, and for these ends to practice tolerance and to live together in peace as good neighbors, to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security, to ensure that armed force shall not be used save in the common interest, to employ international machinery in the promotion of the economic and social development of all people, have resolved to combine our efforts to accomplish these aims. Charter of the UN. Now, sometimes I find material after I've put the bulletin together, and I found this hymn, which I'm just going to read to you. It's number 160. I would often rather read it to you than see if we can sing it, because sometimes that leaves a painful memory that I wasn't intending. So this is a beautiful hymn on the topic. It's number 160. If you want, just read along, but I will read it aloud myself. Far too long, by fear divided, we have settled with the sword quarrels we should be decided by the reconciling word. Now the nations are united, though as yet in name alone, and the distant goal is sighted, which the prophets' souls have shown. May at last we cease from warring, barriers of hate remove, and earth's riches freely sharing, found the dynasty of love. Now that's a beautiful poem, hymn, vision. And now our time of sharing matters of joy and sorrow. We ask that you share yours, that they be personal and that they be brief. And one of our faithful members here will move stones for us, so we don't have to start yelling stones at you. Yelling stones.
And I'll start with my own sorrow. My cousin Mike, who was born Down syndrome and was always with his family, not institutionalized. He's 62, way back when there were no services to help Down syndrome people. And he's now in the hospital on a ventilator. And my dear aunt, she's cared for him for all these years. And my cousin, for those of you who know Southern California, lives in Newport Beach, works in Long Beach, spends every night in Riverside in care. So I'm going to put more than one stone down here, 3 of them.
Thank you for telling us.
One thing, I'm Judith. One thing that Debbie forgot to mention was the very, very special cat that's in a man called Otto. It's, very special. But my stone today is for my father, who joined the Navy at the beginning of World War II, served under Nimitz in the Pacific, was in Okinawa, came back. He started out as a young, rather man with not too many goals. He came out of the war with a wife and 2 children and immediately signed up for the GI Bill, went to college at a land-grant college, and he never looked back. He had an amazing life, and this is for him. A very, very special man.
Mm. Also, on the joy side, today is a birthday for 3 of our folks. My wife Lori here, Kathy Atherton, back there with Bud, and Judy Cialone. Now, if they were all here, I was going to ask the 3 of them to get up and sing. But since only 2 are here, we'll just wish them a very happy birthday. Anyone else with something to share?
I'm thinking today of my sister in Texas, Deborah Sue Padgett, who just recently had surgery and has begun a month's treatment for breast cancer.
Hi, I'm Jackie Robbins, and I have a joy, which is that I don't think I've ever used this word before, but I am resurrecting the Treasure Coast Youth Symphony Summer Strings program. And the UU Church looks like it's going to be the home for this for a 6-week period where I just meet with these kids once a week to do string development so that they'll be better prepared for everything, including the next fall season, which has not happened before. I've done it with groups in the past, but COVID hit and it's gone kablooey, so I'm happy about that. And I appreciate the church opening themselves up for this possibility.
Anyone else? Well, we always move one more for people that we haven't said out loud, but have on our minds and hearts. For a prayer meditation, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think today, or tomorrow rather, tomorrow would have been Enid Johnson's centennial of her birth, I believe. Close, if not exact, tomorrow. So in honor of Enid, a precious memory and spirit to us, I'm reading from her poetry entitled Prayer. O Lord of all, who spills the sun on swarming street and forest floor with equal care and sweet regard, outpouring like the endless laughter of a child on cobblestone and buxom field and bomb-sick yard. O Lord of all, who bursts the cloud on tender seed and burdened limb with simple love and equal team, abundant as the child's unfathomed spring of tears on roofless hut and naked waif and bulging stream. O Lord of all, do sear our souls and drench our sight with cratered hills and roadside beds and anguished men, that we might sing with but one voice across the vast and tortured air, a word of passioned hope again. Our beloved Enid Johnson. And now moments of silence. Okay, it's time for Spirit of Life. And now is the time for our morning offering here. We hope people experience joy and generosity. And now we invite yours. Let's see, who are our willing volunteers this morning? AJ and Dave. Good. Do I need to speak up? I found this video. It's a school choir of black children invited to sing for a practice session of the football team, the Baltimore Ravens. I'm not sure what they are singing, but they are indeed inspiring. I think you will find
Let
it
this
so
soft mineral melt in your mouth.
Have an amazing treat and gift here today. The Cardinal Sheehan Choir has agreed to be here. They sung the national anthem a couple weeks ago at our stadium. I know that the choir, the kids wanted to meet you guys, but I told them, hey man, we wanted to meet them even more. So how about a big welcome and a big round of applause?
If I rise high like the waves, if you rise unafraid, we all will rise. Higher than our social and racial differences, higher than economic level, higher than all of the adversities in the world. And together, we will move mountains. And if they don't hear our message, we'll just do it over and over and over 1,000 times again for you.
Broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we'll walk it out and move mountains. We'll walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up. I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up. And I'll do it 1,000 times again. I will rise. We will rise. I will rise again.
When the silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains, bring it to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up in spite of the earth. I will rise, we will rise, we will
certainly gave their all. I try not to reprimand you a lot. I mean, God, I'm just glad you're here. But I gotta say that a few weeks ago, I published my topic for today, and I said, I know some of you have thoughts on this topic. Which wars did we enter, because we should have, and which are wars of regret? And I didn't hear from one of you. All right, I said that. Now I want to tell you about a happy memory with a vet from Connecticut. There was a guy in one of my Connecticut churches who was like in his mid-90s. He had been at war. He was a vet. And the movie Saving Private Ryan came around. Wasn't that Tom Hanks also? Yeah. He's going to get an honorable mention later also. But anyhow, I knew that my mate was not about to go see Saving Private Ryan. So I asked Harry, because he often talked about his days in the service. And we went to see it. And when we got in the car, Harry said to me, "Bob, why did we go to that movie?" Well, I said, "Harry, I thought you might enjoy it." He said, "Bob, I was there. You don't enjoy going back there." Well, I mean, he could have told me that beforehand, but Harry was quite a guy. Now, I also just want to say before the sermon, I want to underline about Saturday morning. It's set for 11 o'clock, the celebration of Richard Granite's life. The family says it could be a big turnout. They are ordering food. I signed us up for finger food, dessert, cookies, brownies, like that. So please bring sweet finger food before the service and leave it in the other room. Okay, the sermon today. Last week I showed you our cacti, and it just so happened that one of the buds became that on Tuesday or Wednesday morning, one of the buds I showed you last week. And by the end of the day, it was a sad sight. But for the time it was blooming, it was beautiful. So you know about things like that. When you look up the history of Memorial Day, you get a number of gems that probably won't be taught in many places. You learn that in 1868, freed slaves held a service to remember and to honor the Union Army dead. And you also get the story of the History Channel of the Harlem Hellfighters, not the Globetrotters, the Hellfighters. So I want to show you this video. It's not exactly on my topic, but I'm afraid this is the kind of history that some want to suppress. So to upstage that, I hope you'll find this as interesting as I did. The History Channel presentation of the Harlem Hellfighters.
Was a regiment of New York National Guardsmen in the First World War. They were set up to fail by their own government. They were humiliated, degraded, eventually given to the French army as a throwaway, and they ended up coming home as one of the most decorated units in the entire U.S. Army.
The Harlem Hellfighters are one of the most important regiments in American history. In World War I, they helped to establish to the entire world the power of black soldiers in the military.
It was very difficult at that time for African Americans to get into the United States military because there was this perception that African Americans would not do well in battle. They had to overcome the prejudice of their own countrymen and yet also perform ably on the battlefield.
Like so many units of African American descent, when they go overseas, they're not sure what they're going to do. Are they going to fight as infantry? Or are they going to be stevedores and load ships? Or are they going to be labor units and cut wood?
And so they're committed to labor duty, they're unloading ships, building latrines, those type of support services. And as you can imagine, these men have been trained and they're willing to fight, they're ready to fight, and this is stressful for them.
They were finally given to the French army, which in a way was an even greater insult because in the First World War, when the United States entered, General Pershing, the commanding officer, was very clear that American forces would not be fed piecemeal into the French and British army because the French and British wanted reinforcements, and Pershing said absolutely not. When Americans join this war, they will fight as an American force under an American flag led by an American general. ... except for the black guys. You can have them.
Henry Johnson is perhaps one of the most remarkable black military heroes in U.S. history.
And he found himself in no man's land with Private Needham Roberts manning a listening post.
And Needham Roberts hears click, click, click. And he realizes somebody's cutting the wire. It's potentially a German raid.
And so Roberts is passing him grenades, and they line up these grenades, and the Germans actually do come across the lines. Roberts is hurt, and now Henry Johnson is left to defend their position and to stave off this attack. And then he makes the mistake of jamming a French cartridge into his American gun, and it no longer will work. And the Germans are on top of him.
He then used his rifle like a club, and then he ended up fighting with a knife against the Kaiser's best and turned them.
He's wounded in the fray. He's struck, for example, in the foot, and has a debilitating injury as a result. And he fights them off, he says, for what seemed like an hour.
The Germans ran shrieking into the night, all because of one man.
It's not until the next morning that people realize what a tremendous act this was. They discover 4 bodies of dead German soldiers. And they also realize from the equipment and other things that are left behind that as many as 30 may have been involved in this altercation.
As soon as he drove off those Germans, the French awarded him with the Croix de Guerre, a great honor. Unfortunately, it took about 75 years for the US government to give him the Legion of Merit. Had he been white, he would have walked out of that war with the Medal of Honor. What was so shocking to me when I began to research the story of the Hellfighters was that after they had performed so magnificently in combat, the United States government actually sent a memorandum to the French government, essentially implementing Jim Crow, essentially saying, don't give them some notion that they are equals, because we don't want them taking that notion back to the United States and demanding equality.
When they come back to the United States, he's not awarded the Purple Heart. There's no notation in his military record of his injury. And so he winds up not being able to work because of this injury. He doesn't get any kind of assistance from the Army or from the government as a result. And he ends up dying in 1929 penniless. So it again shows the paradox. Here's this great story of valor and of courage on the part of this soldier, and ultimately he comes back to a nation that doesn't honor that sacrifice.
We tend to think we all know American history so well, but the story of the Harlem Hellfighters should be one of the first stories told. It wasn't about killing other people, it was about being Americans and serving their country well. That was the inclination of the Harlem Hellfighters.
When you are African American in 1917, democracy is armor. Democracy is a weapon. And to fight for a war to make the world safe for democracy was something more than just some ethereal crusade for the Hellfighters. It had concrete results. They were fighting for the rights to be a citizen of the country that they were born in.
Okay, thank you, Karina. Can the History Channel be banned or blocked? Memorial Day used to be known as Decoration Day, meaning decorating the graves of our war dead. Our U.S. history of wars brings a mix of sadness, pride, ambivalence, gratitude, and ambiguity. I've heard people call some wars good wars, meaning that had to be fought, and there was some felt rightness, maybe even righteousness about them. They were saving somebody, maybe all of us, from something worse. But to be honest, war and truth-telling are rarely bedfellows. We've learned that as a big part of the truth setting us free, but first making us miserable. Let's start with the War of Independence. Surely that was a righteous war. We made British colonies into a free country. And here we are. It would seem unmixedly and unquestionably wondrous, but for the human beings, the original owners who were here first and were forced to give up their land, their culture, their way of life. For those who survived our invasion, they were rounded up on reservations and eventually allowed to run casinos. Canada is ahead of us in reparations to the victims of this massive historical theft, and ahead of us in trying to honor the culture that was ripped from the Native children by removing them from their families, and Native traditions were taken from them by government and Christian churches collaborating to make them something they weren't. Most wars seem about stealing land and resources. Probably the most righteous war we entered was WW2, with America's proud tradition of isolationism and the allies of WW1 guaranteeing WW2 with the treatment of the vanquished. FDR worked no small feat, helping the Brits in the battle until the Yanks could hold out and stay out no longer. But the glory of VE and VJ days did not hide our historical warts. America turned back boatloads of Jewish refugees to their death and rounded up more reservations, roundups of Americans of Japanese ancestry. I wondered, did those Japanese get their land and possessions back? And I looked it up and found out this. $400 million worth of property was taken from them. They got back $38 million. Eventually, a few years later, each person interned was given $20,000 to help start over. The war that never went away for me was Vietnam. When you bring it up, you often sense a chill. The country has never dealt with wartime historical error, a kind of discussion quicksand. When John Kerry ran for president in 2004, and his young brave man testimony before Congress, who will be the last American to die in Vietnam, was played over and over, veterans groups oozed traitor. Even though the Defense Secretary, McNamara, wrote near his death that our government was lied to by our own ambassador to Saigon. I believe it was Lodge, who had been Nixon's running mate in 1960. Many have written that the polarization that surfaced in the Vietnam War has never gone away. So I got to college, and so many my age did not even get into adulthood. In '63, I began a student ministry in the farmland of West Virginia, about 15 miles away from my college, a way of working my way through college. A young congregant who was my age, 20, Little Jimmy he was called. Little Jimmy was called up and drafted. 3 months later, he was brought home in a coffin, typhoid. For 10 years more, that war dragged on. 50,000 or so U.S. war dead, 3 to 5 million Asian dead combatants and civilians. And we've learned that the president who settled that war, and another president since, back-channeled messages to the enemy to wait for their election. So to extend the war and the killing to enhance their election chances. Since the Vietnam War, I've learned some painful things. As good as you want to feel about this country, and you often do, and I certainly do, and as good as you want this country to be as a defender of liberty in the world, and you know the free world needs it to be, and the unfree world needs it even more, still, we have to temper pride with humility and honesty. So this week, the aforementioned actor Tom Hanks to the graduating class of Harvard. Now, this is the last praise Tom Hanks is getting in this morning's service. But this was Hanks to the Harvard graduates this past week. He said, "Truth is sacred." And he urged those grads to fight to defend it. The truth to some is no longer empirical. It's no longer based on data, nor common sense, nor even common decency. Telling the truth is no longer the benchmark for public service. Telling the truth is no longer the benchmark for public service. Truth is now considered malleable by opinion, by zero-sum endgames. The graduates had a choice to be one of three types of Americans: those who embrace liberty and freedom for all, those who won't, and those who are indifferent. The effort is optional, but the truth is sacred, unalterable, chiseled into the stone and the foundation of our republic. Thank you, Tom Hanks. It is incredible, unfathomable to me, that this needs to be said in our time, and this needs to be lived and fought for as long as we have any fight in us. Does this apply to patriotism and speaking the truth about war and peace, as uncomfortable as that often is? So long as we are willing to listen to those who feel very differently. We all know that passion, what happens when we fall in love, is often described as temporary insanity. Why? Because your thinking ability is backburnered or just suspended. Because stopping to think, to weigh, what are we doing, doesn't seem the order of the moment. Passion and patriotism get mixed together, and marching orders, not thinking orders, are all that's invited. Once men and women go off in uniform, it feels like the time has passed for, let's talk about what we are doing. Is this really the last resort? And once you know wars have been based on lies, you have to live with, we did this. This was done in our name. And certainly those who served, and certainly those who sacrificed their lives, are to be honored. Still, patriotism and wartime get complicated. Mark Twain said, patriotism is supporting your country all the time, and your government when it deserves it. Wading through what patriotism requires is not happy talk or flag waving. It's government that decides to go to war and that often looks like old men and women telling young men and women, just go and fight and don't question. Those coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan brought new emphasis to mental health needs and the country's obligation to those who served. For me, patriotism in war got murky. When I was thinking I couldn't go, I could serve in some way, but I couldn't go, still I had to ponder, what right do I have to decide if and when? There's almost never a good war. So NATO and the Marshall Plan and the United Nations were the brilliance of the Allied leaders. Hard to believe any American president could ever question the value and the hope of NATO. Memorial Day is a reminder that nations have pulled together to prevent catastrophes. Study war no more is the prophet's dream. We have to keep hoping for and working for leaders who are as committed to the truth as they are to winning. 159, our closing hymn. This is our song, 159, 2 verses. Stand as willing and able. Please be seated. As Debbie extinguishes, I close with these Words from the great UU leader and visionary, William Schultz. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. William F. Schultz.
I'm going to play Let There Be Peace on Earth. And if anybody knows the words, please sing along. I don't know if it's in the hymnal. I couldn't find it, but I think it's in the next book. In any case, you probably will recognize it.
Well, you do know how to hum.